Unmasking the Jezebel Spirit. In a world filled with spiritual battles, one adversary stands out among the rest. Its name strikes fear into the hearts of many, its influence weaving through history and into the present day. But what exactly is the Jezebel Spirit, and how can we unmask its deceptive tactics? Written by renowned spiritual teacher John Paul Jackson, Unmasking the Jezebel Spirit peels back the layers of this ancient adversary, revealing its true nature and empowering believers to overcome its influence. Through gripping stories and biblical insights, Jackson exposes the characteristics and strategies of the Jezebel Spirit. From manipulation to seduction, its tactics are cunning and its influence pervasive. The Jezebel Spirit thrives on manipulation and deception, but it can be defeated through spiritual discernment and the power of prayer. Unmasking the Jezebel Spirit equips readers with the tools they need to identify, confront, and ultimately overcome this formidable adversary. If you're ready to step into victory over spiritual warfare, dive into Unmasking the Jezebel Spirit by John Paul Jackson today. Unmask the deception. Embrace the truth. There are moments in history when a door for massive change opens. Great revolutions for good or for evil occur in the vacuum created by these openings. It is in these times that key men and women, even entire generations, risk everything to become the hinge of history, the pivotal point to determine which way the door will swing. Elijah was such a man. Born into one of the darkest times of Israel's history, his calling in life was literally to turn an entire nation back to God. At that time, King Ahab and his heathen wife, Jezebel, seemed to be on a personal mission from hell to stamp out the righteousness that remained in Israel. They served the vile Canaanite idols, Baal and Ashtoreth, demonic principalities that demanded sexual immorality and perversion in their fertility rituals. In her rampage, Jezebel built pagan altars and murdered the Lord's prophets, replacing them with more than 800 occult priests, soothsayers, and temple prostitutes. Israel, a nation belonging to the Lord, sunk into its deepest moral morass. The influence of demonic power operating through Jezebel was so great that out of 10 million Israelites, only 7,000 were considered faithful to the Lord. Jezebel influenced them to forsake their covenant with God. She was responsible for corrupting an entire nation. In the midst of this spiritual seduction, Elijah strode onto the scene to confront Ahab, Jezebel, and their legions of pagan sorcerers. In the midst of unspeakable depravity, Elijah stood as a solitary voice for righteousness. This holy man was God's answer to the cohorts of hell hosted by Jezebel. America is much like Israel of that day. Our nation was founded on God's laws by our righteous forefathers. Now we see the same spirit of Jezebel rising to destroy every vestige of godly heritage. Years ago, a woman in our church in Pasadena, California had a dream where she was crying out, "I see Elijah." The entire congregation began to chant, "Elijah, Elijah, Elijah." As they were chanting, a white cross appeared on a blue curtain in the church. The congregation's chant turned into, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." Suddenly a mighty rushing wind swept through the auditorium. When the woman shared her dream with the pastoral staff, we wrote to some prophetic friends seeking an understanding of the dream. The consensus was, clearly there was coming a prophetic Elijah movement that would bring an unveiling of the cross and help to usher in a mighty wind of revival. Chris Berglund, a friend of mine, took the woman's dream and prayed, "God, if there's more to this dream, give me insight." That night Chris dreamed the exact same dream, but at the end of the dream he heard a voice say, "That which hinders Elijah is Jezebel." Today, there is mortal combat in this nation between the spirit of Elijah and the spirit of Jezebel. The contenders on both sides are the prophets. To the victor goes the soul of the nation. Jezebel's greatest fear and archenemies are the prophets, for they expose her schemes and call the church to repentance. John Paul Jackson is a prophetic father who, in the spirit of Elijah, is exposing Jezebel's activity. Unmasking the Jezebel Spirit is a voice calling us to a no-toleration mentality in our lives and in our churches. While reading it, I found the Spirit of God deeply probing me, searching for areas of inward toleration of Jezebel in my own soul. You will find it the same as you read. In the book of Revelation, Jesus confronts this same influence in the church at Thyatira. These are the words of the Son of God, whose eyes are like blazing fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze. I know your deeds, your love and faith, your service, and perseverance, and that you are now doing more than you did at first. Nevertheless, I have this against you: you tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess. By her teaching she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. I will strike her children dead. Then all the churches will know that I am he who searches hearts and minds. Revelation 2:18-21, 23. God has something against the Church of America. We have tolerated Jezebel. Since we have tolerated her, America's children and the children of our churches are being destroyed. However, a standard is being raised up that will produce prophetic sons and daughters who will carry the moral authority that can turn the nation. A young friend of mine had a vivid dream of the pop icon, Madonna, surrounded by men. He walked up to her and said, "I'm going to marry you." She replied mockingly, "I would never marry you." As he walked away, he heard her tell those around her, "I have him wrapped around my finger." She started to seduce him and a powerful spell began to take control of him. Suddenly, my friend came to his senses and cried out, "I know who you are. You're Jezebel." And the demonic spell was broken. This dream changed my friend's life forever. He repented from a love for the world and an inward toleration of Jezebel's seductions in his life. He now stands as a holy testimony for God, even as he works in the midst of Hollywood's seductive entertainment culture. The church in America must come to such an awakening as well. Thank God for John Paul Jackson and his gift of revelation. May God use this book as a sword to slice through our deception and prepare the way for a great Elijah revolution that can break the curse off of our lives, our families, and our nation.